Hey everyone! So around this time last year, I played with 200 bassists and then 200 drummers in a giant football stadium in Sao Paulo called Allianz Parque. And as you can imagine, the results were pretty crazy. But you're probably wondering why and how we managed to get 200 bassists and 200 drummers into a giant football stadium, and how we made a video without it sounding absolutely terrible. Because even though the final performances turned out great, there was a huge amount of stress, excitement, and unexpected disasters to get to that point. So I'm going to take you on the journey of how I played with the biggest band literally in the world. It all started when I got an email from a guy named Walter Mazzeo asking if I'd like to go and see Rockin' 1000's show in Sao Paulo and make some videos with them. In case you don't know, Rockin' 1000 is the biggest rock band in the world. They play shows all over the world in giant stadiums, and there's 1,000 musicians playing great throwback rock songs like Learn to Fly, Enter Sandman, Seven Nation Army. They had an absolutely massive viral video a few years ago where they played Learn to Fly, and it even got Foo Fighters' attention, leading them to play a free show in that town. Walter said it would be great to do something with the bassist, maybe a giant bass orchestra or something. It sounded like a really cool idea. I'd never done anything like this before, but you know me, I'm always up for a crazy challenge, and so I said yes. I started thinking about how big of a task this was going to be. You know, coming up with parts for everyone and writing them out and then asking all of the bassists to learn them really well so that they could perform them live. I figured it was probably going to take about 6 months of preparation, and that's when he told me that the show is in 2 weeks' time. Also, he wanted me to do something with the 200 drummers as well. So now I had 2 weeks to essentially become the musical director for 2 performances that would normally take several months of planning and rehearsals. But I figured it was still worth the risk, and sometimes the best musical moments are created when you just don't overthink everything. So with such a tight deadline, I had to think about what would make a great video without too much rehearsal, because at this point I still thought we were going to have rehearsals. That's when I took a look at their set list and realized that I could probably create a new version of Under Pressure without too much effort. The bassists had already learned the bass line for Under Pressure for their main show, so I figured I could ask half of them to play that and then the other half the bassists to play the bum bum using harmonics. Then all I had to do was create an interesting tapping arrangement of the vocal melody and play it on top. And for the drummers, I thought it would be amazing to play the first ever slap bass solo with 200 drummers accompanying. I realized that my song Elevated, which is officially released on Spotify this October 5th, has a pretty simple drum part that would sound incredible with 200 drummers playing it. It would take a bit of work, but nothing we couldn't go over in rehearsal. So at this point, I had figured out what I wanted to play, and after a couple of weeks, I landed in Sao Paulo. One of the first things we did when we got there was visit the stadium to watch the band rehearsing. I knew when I agreed to this that hearing 1,000 musicians play at the same time in a giant football stadium would sound huge, but I wasn't prepared for what I actually heard. It sounded like a scene in Lord of the Rings where all of the orcs are whacking their spears on the ground to try and intimidate the good guys, but instead of spears, they're holding giant speakers blasting Seven Nation Army. That's pretty much the best way I can describe it. I walked around through the band and realized that every bassist and guitarist had their own amp, meaning there are about 400 amps in the stadium, and also hundreds of mics for all of the drummers and singers, and even a load of keyboards too. I never got to meet the sound engineer for this band, but he deserves all kinds of medals. That's also when I realized that there was no roof on the stadium, and it would probably be really bad if it rained. More on that later. Hello?
We've been trying to reach you concerning your car's extended warranty.
To me, it seems like there are scams everywhere nowadays, and the ones where they call you are especially annoying. It makes me want to slap them. But while slap bass is the solution to many of life's problems, a way more effective solution for this particular thing is to use Incogni. The main reason that we get these calls is because our phone numbers are listed on hundreds of online databases without us even knowing. They also have a load of other stuff like our email, physical address, and employment, and Incogni will contact all of those data brokers and request for them to remove your data from their database. I've been using Incogni for a few months now, and as you can see, my data's already been removed from 72 different places, with another 54 on the way. That deserves a celebratory slap. It's dramatically brought down the number of spam calls and texts that I get. So if you think that sounds good, just head over to incognito.com/bear2 and use the code bear2 to get an exclusive offer of 60% off. That's incognito.com/bear2 and use the code bear2 or click the link below to get an exclusive offer of 60% off. So now that I'd seen the band, it was time to figure out how I was going to tell all of these bassists and drummers what I wanted them to do. I asked Walter how much rehearsal time there was going to be, and he said that they'd set aside 15 minutes during the Rockin' 1000 rehearsal for me to film videos with the band. So in 15 minutes I had to explain what I wanted 200 drummers and bassists to do, and with no rehearsal time at all, film 1 or 2 takes of each video and hope that one of them turned out okay. I think it's safe to say I was feeling a little bit panicked at this point. I was definitely expecting a lot more rehearsal time, and I was starting to wonder if this whole thing was going to be a complete disaster. Just a quick side note, I know some of this might make Rockin' 1000 seem a little disorganized, but that's actually not the case at all. They're a very well-oiled machine, but they just wanted to prioritize their main show over the videos that we were making, which is very understandable. So anyway, after that slight bombshell, I went back to the hotel and tried to get as much sleep as possible before the big day. On the day of the performance, it was pretty cloudy and I got to the stadium around 10 AM. We were supposed to start filming at 11 AM and I checked the weather app and it said there was a 50% chance of rain at 12, which was a little bit too close for comfort. Just like with most rehearsals, things started getting behind schedule and our filming got pushed back to 12. Meaning there was now a 50% chance that our filming was going to get cancelled so that they could stop 400 amps from simultaneously exploding. It was definitely pretty nerve-wracking having to just wait and hope that the whole thing wasn't going to get called off, but luckily 12 o'clock came around and there was no sign of rain yet. Suddenly, after hours of waiting, I had 15 minutes to film 2 videos with 400 people, and it was probably one of the most intense 15-minute periods of my life.
Okay, ready, stand by, and we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
I walked into the middle of the stadium and they handed me a mic. I suddenly realized that a lot of them probably don't speak English and I don't speak Portuguese, but luckily I managed to find someone really quickly who could translate for me. We started with Under Pressure, and luckily the bassists were already conveniently split into 2 groups, so I told one half to play the actual bass line and the other half to just play bum bum using harmonics. And everyone on this side is going to do bum bum harmonics. I'll play it for you in a second. Bum bum. It's fret 5. Because it was so simple, they picked it up really quickly. Everybody was wearing in-ear monitors and we were playing along to a click track so that we stayed in time with each other. We filmed 2 takes, and to be honest, the first one was pretty messy, but we nailed it on the second one and it sounded heavenly. Next up was my song Elevated, the first ever slap bass solo with 200 drummers. And this one was actually quite a lot more difficult because of how huge the stadium is. It meant that a lot of drummers were a lot further away from me than others, meaning their sound took longer to get to me than the ones close to me. That might not sound like a huge problem, but that slight difference actually makes it sound like everybody's playing completely out of time. This isn't an issue for people in the audience watching the show because they're not in the middle of it, meaning that all of the drummers are roughly the same distance away, give or take a few percent. Basically, I had to just completely block out all of the sound that I was hearing in the stadium and instead turn my headphones up to max volume so that all I could hear was the sound being picked up by the microphones. And luckily, it turned out amazingly. Pretty much immediately after we finished filming, it started raining and they had to cover everything up, so I got lucky, but unfortunately their rehearsal got delayed. The next day I went and watched their performance, which was absolutely incredible and definitely something you should check out if they ever play near you. I also got to meet a lot of the band members, which was amazing, especially as I got to meet some of you who follow my channel. It was a really wholesome event with everyone from kids to grandmas playing, and it was just an incredible example of how music can bring people together. I flew back the next day and I was mostly just relieved that everything went okay. I met some really great people on this trip, and I have to say thanks to everyone in Rockin' 1000 for helping me with these crazy ideas, and of course thanks to you guys for watching. I hope it was entertaining. I'll see if I can do more fun, crazy, weird stuff like this in the future. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.